This is what they don't tell you at university. Well, not in so many words. This introduction to PR aims to give you a broad insight into the workings of PR with a view to you undertaking some or all of the 10 units offered by the PR Academy. All courses are delivered by me, Dr. Greg Smith. I'm a former daily newspaper journalist, PR professional and university lecturer with more than 30 years' experience. What you will learn in the 10 units of study is based on material I delivered at university, but without the theory. The content is somewhere between university and a technical college. I like to use the analogy of PR people being jugglers, so just keep that in mind throughout this talk. You'll hear why they have to be jugglers in the next 40 minutes or so. We always start with a little bit of history, and this is about all you'll get. And I like to use the quote from historian Daniel Boorstin, and his point, sort of, is that in public relations, your job is to make your clients seem great, but without anybody knowing what you're trying to do. But really, that's not what PR is about. Let's talk about PR. First things first, a brief overview of public relations. After this, you may then decide whether it's not right for you or it is. Unlike its twin cousin, marketing, which is about profit in the short term, PR is essentially about dealing with people and long-term relationships. But that doesn't mean to say that you have to be good with people. The chap that was considered the father of modern PR, Edward Bernays, didn't really like people. But you have to at least be able to understand them. PR certainly is not advertising, which is a subset of marketing, although there are forms of PR advertising which are usually related to a cause, such as the environment. And again, when you're at university, we look at history. We also look at some definitions, which helps to set the groundwork for what the subject actually is. According to an American scholar, Rex Harlow, there were more than 500 definitions of public relations in the 1990s, and there's probably a few more since Rex looked at them. Here's two definitions. The first one, corporate public relations, is a means by which businesses seek to improve their ability to do business. And the second one, well, this is mine, and I say that it's the planned and sustained attempt by an organisation to establish mutually beneficial long-term relationships with key audiences through ethical communication. Now, okay, they're both academic definitions. So let's look at something quite different. More simply, public relations is telling people something and getting them to first understand it and then act on it. So if you're trying to get people to understand, you're trying to tell them something. And if you're getting them to act on your message, you're actually persuading them. And a lot of the theory in public relations that you learn at university is in fact persuasion theory. But like I said, we're not getting into theory. PR is essentially three things. It gets down to what do you want to say, who do you want to say it to, and who or what is your target audience. Then, how are you going to say it? So what channels and tools are you going to use? You're combining powerful messages to deliver to them to carefully selected audiences. You'll also be working with a few high-profile public events and memorable images. Combine them and you have an effective public relations campaign. The two pictures here as examples, you can see the top one, Red Bull's Man from Space, which you may be familiar with, and the Chief Executive Officer of Virgin Airlines, Richard Branson, serving drinks on a rival airline. These two images demonstrate the power of PR, although in one form, which is publicity. We'll look at the different forms of PR a little later on. Another thing that public relations is, it's a much maligned field. The common perceptions are that it's about glamour, parties and spinning the truth. It's of deceit and deception. So you maybe refer back to that opening song about Jimmy Buffett and public relations being about spin and boozing and smoozing. Well, really it's not those things. Certainly, some people give the field a bad name, just as in other fields, such as perhaps car salesmen, journalists, they get a bad rap. However, because PR deals so much with the media, which is really still the largest influencer in our society, the profession is all too easily a target for journalists, who can be victims of false information. So our example on the left there, meter maids on Australia's Gold Coast, describe their role as public relations. Is it really? One form of. Further confusion arises when you consider there are more than 70 different job titles that incorporate some aspects of PR. Some of these jobs go by the names of Corporate Affairs Manager, Public Affairs Executive, Communications Manager, Media Liaison Manager, Government and Community Relations, and Industry Liaison. It's a very long list. Now, what can PR actually do? It is a very powerful tool, as I hope you'll see in this lecture. How do you think Bill Gates or Richard Branson became so successful? Gates once said if he was down to his last dollar, he'd spend it on PR. Branson is really the master of PR. He's always in the media. You will not see Virgin do a lot of advertising. So what does public relations do? Public relations creates awareness. It educates and influences people. It influences public opinion. It promotes and protects reputation and guides organisations to communicate change and to re-examine the values and ethics of their audiences. The key word here is communication, though. PR is a communications discipline. Now, what are the 4 basic tasks of public relation? It's generally agreed by academics and professionals there are 4 roles that PR people perform. Harold Burson, who was chairman of one of the world's largest PR firms, Burson Marsteller, defined the 4 basic tasks as a sensor of social change. So PR people perceive the rumblings at the heart of society and how it will affect an organisation. They help management prepare for this. And this is where you enter the field of change communication. So when an organisation is going through a change, be it change of image, change of direction, staffing changes, there's the role for PR. What is happening? Secondly, PR becomes a corporate conscience for an organisation. So the PR person has to be the moral and ethical guardian. PR people protect a company's reputation. And for me, reputation is perhaps at the heart of all PR. Thirdly, you're a communicator. You are delivering the message, but it's just one aspect and role of PR, but certainly one of the most important, because if you can't communicate, you're not going to get the message across. And lastly, you're a corporate monitor. And this is where the practitioner must make sure the organisation's outcomes are matching the expectations of its publics. And that's where the PR person must play the role of devil's advocate or ombudsman. You might notice that all of these roles have a management focus. That's not to say you're all going to become corporate managers. However, you will be managing some very important functions of an organisation. You have to be able to learn how to perform these functions, and that's where the PR Academy can help. So let's just look broadly now at the specialties within PR. I mentioned a few of the job descriptions within the profession. The good thing about public relations is that it offers variety, even if PR people generally tend not to do a lot of things. There was a time when PR practitioners did do everything, such as send out media releases, create newsletters, organise functions, and so on. Those days are long gone. People now tend to specialise. However, you still have to know how these things tie in with the overall function of public relation. And so listed on the screen now are some of those specialties within public relations. Okay, the areas of operations. So public relations today is split into 3 main subgroups, though it has a variety of specialised areas. And these include working in government, working for non-profit organisations, so charities, environmental organisations and so forth, and for private industry. Within private industry, there are further subgroups. You might be an in-house practitioner, so for example, one of the large banks, they will have a PR or communications team, or perhaps you may be working in a consultancy role, so a public relations / marketing company will employ people and subcontract them out to different organisations. And within all those roles in PR, whatever sector you're working in, there are two functions. Firstly, the internal function, and secondly, the external function. So the internal function is aiming your communications at staff. External are all those people outside your organisation. Now, what do PR people do? Well, you can see why PR people are jugglers. And here's why. Because this is some of the things that public relations people will do during the course of their daily work. Just have a look through all those. And of course, when you're doing all that, and sometimes you're doing several things at once, because when you're working on a campaign, all these things come into play, you end up juggling. But wait, there's even more. You're going to need some skills to do all those things. The International Association of Business Communications lists all these as functions of public relations. And this is a little bit more daunting even than the previous slide. Certainly within the courses that the Public Relations Academy teaches, we can't cover them all, but however, we teach the topics in bold. And we actually teach the topics in bold and some more. Some more of the specific jobs that PR professionals do. And as I mentioned, you won't have to learn how to do all of them in our courses, but you will learn about those topics, as I said, in bold. All right. Don't stop now. Don't give up. It seems daunting, but really we're only going to be covering 10 units in the course, and you can do one or all 10 units. In order to do all those things we just listed, you're going to have to be a certain kind of person, and these are the qualities that you need to be as a PR professional. You need to have initiative, so you need to be able to produce ideas, to grab the opportunity that presents it. You need to have a can-do attitude. You need to be able to get on with it. So someone that's quite a hands-on person and doesn't need much instruction, you'll do well. Obviously, you need to be creative. You need to come up with ideas. You need to be thinking the whole time about how you're going to do things. You can have flair, sure, but you've still got to have the ability to be methodical. So to be able to stick to deadlines and to be able to plan and organise. PR people need an interest in news because you have to know what's going on around you and how it's affecting your organisation. And as I've mentioned, you need to be able to work to deadline, because if you're dealing with the media, they have really strict deadlines. So you need to be aware of those, and you need to train yourself to be able to work to deadline. Most importantly, you need to be able to write. I mean, even though we work in an age of multimedia today and a lot of things are online, there's still a lot of words out there. How many emails do you read a day? How many blogs do you read? People are always writing on Facebook. The list is endless. You need to be able to get your message across in writing. And one of the things I always say, you need common sense. I can't teach that. You've either got it or you haven't. And again, you need to be able to juggle. So what type of person does well in public relations? Well, in a nutshell, it's someone who has strong communication skills. You need to be articulate, so you need to be able to speak and write well. You need to be someone that can understand a variety of people and know how to relate to them. So, you know, you'll be dealing with a wide range of people because you need to know how they think, because the way you communicate with different audiences will vary. The way you communicate to a lawyer will be different to the way you communicate with perhaps an accountant. The language is different. You need to be someone that's confident, You need to be a quick learner and thinker. You need to be persuasive. And above all, you need to listen. Because a lot of PR, in fact, 90% of the information you're working with is information in. So you're a gatherer of information. You've got to be able to distill that and then put out your message, that 10%, the outgoing communication, from all that information you've gathered. And believe me, there are so many sources of information that are out there that affect the organisation that you're going to be working for. You have to keep abreast of all that. Now, briefly now, I'd just like to give an introduction to some of the rules of public relation, which might give you an idea of the way it works. Because even if you don't undertake our courses, you can at least base your PR campaign on 7 basic rules. The first one is intention. This is the guiding light principle that helps me and it helps my clients and will help you. Setting an intention or a purpose will direct everything you do. You have to have a reason for doing it. Why am I doing this campaign? The intention or the intent will also direct the universe to bring you what you need to achieve that intention. So set an intention. Ask yourself, what do you want to achieve in the next 30 days? What do I want to be? Where do I want my organisation to be after those 30 days? Write that so it's a guiding light. That's your principle. That's the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe at the moment, it's that you now want to enrol in this course. Now, you know that the world is full of intentions and people say they're going to do things, but many of them just never get around to delivering. And that brings us round to the second rule. Follow through on your promises. Don't say something and fail to deliver. In public relations, there's a further little secret within this when you're delivering a program, and that's to under-promise and over-deliver. So don't tell people you're going to do something grand when at the end of the day you possibly can't reach all of the objectives. Aim low, not to say that your program has to be of a low standard, but don't over-promise. The third thing is trust your instincts. Follow your gut feeling. Take a chance. Go with the flow. I'm a big believer in this, and I'm often surprised by what my hunches tell me. I mean, I might get an urge to turn left one day when I've been turning right for years, and suddenly I discover something that changes my life dramatically. There are so many people that get a hunch and don't act on it. And I've learned from experience that if I don't act on that hunch, I'll regret it later. You might have heard the saying, you'll never know if you never go. Well, that's what I mean. That slogan, by the way, comes from Northern Territory Tourism. Thanks to them for that. Number 4, make a list. Seems simple. Make an actual list of what you want to do and what you want to act on. What are your intentions? Write them down. What do you want to achieve? This can be the beginning of your PR plan. And use a calendar. I never used to, but maybe the older you get, the better it is to have a reminder. It'll help you when you're trying to reach those deadlines. Number 5, form partnerships. Go where your prospects are. Where are the clients or customers that you're looking for? Where are they already gathered? What do they belong to? So if there's an association, what do they read? What do they watch? What do they listen to? So this is all part of research. And in many ways, this is linked with something that's so valuable, not just in PR, but indeed in life. Ask yourself who is already serving the prospects you want to serve, and go to those people and see if you can create some kind of win-win where you'll promote them and they'll promote you. So if you go to rent a movie, at the checkout you might see a coupon for a pizza. Well, the pizza people and the video people there are working together to serve the same customers. They're not in conflict, they're not competitors, but they just know that the people who rent movies also eat pizza, and the people who eat pizza also rent movies. So they're going after the same audience. So form partnerships. Really important, really important. And this is one of the first things you do when you do a PR campaign, is do your homework. In other words, do research. This is something essential in all areas of business, particularly in PR, where you're dealing with influencing people and persuading them. For those who you end up studying, either here or at university, research is one of the first things you learn to do. Without research, you don't get any good marks at university. I mean, you wouldn't buy a car or a house without looking around to find what's available. You want to get the best deal, so you do your homework. And so it is in PR. You have to be able to provide a background information on things like your competitors, what your business previously did the previous program work or not, who are your target audiences, and so on. And the last thing, really important in PR, gets to the heart of credibility. Don't lie. Everything you do in PR is linked to reputation. You're protecting the reputation of your organisation. If you lie, whether it's to the media or to your boss, your credibility is immediately lost. In fact, there's more than 7 rules to PR, and I can tell you the rest of them if you take my courses. Now, really, that may seem a lot of information, but really, anyone can do PR, really. If you've never done PR before, it might seem scary to pick up the phone and call the editor of the newspaper or to give a speech in front of a local sports club or business group. But as I said at the start, anyone can learn how to do PR. All it takes is time, effort and passion. Good public relations can turn a new business into a success. It can give new life to an organisation or turn a small group of concerned mums into a national movement to end texting while driving. I'd like to thank you for viewing the introduction to PR, and I hope it's given you confidence to undertake further study. The rest of our courses, there are 11 units, but you only have to do 10, or you can do 1 if you like. There are 10 one-hour lectures, and they're broken into 2 modules, as you can see on screen. There's a Certificate 1 and a Certificate 2. Completion of both certificates gives you a Certificate 3. You receive online lectures, course notes and online assistance. You can take the defined pathways or study any unit individually. Simply visit the PR Academy website for more details. I want to assure you that you won't be out of your depth. The courses are practical and suitable for anyone with a good command of English and who is passionate about communication. I hope now you have a good basic grounding into starting your PR studies. The knowledge you gain can be applied to any situation that requires people to be kept informed. I look forward to your continued studies with the PR Academy. Thank you for your time.